Welcome back to the Waxwing Beginner Guitar Series. I am Elliot and Waxwing is my music school. In episode 5 we were talking about an introduction to rhythm, but episode 5 ran a little bit longer than I was anticipating. Its runtime was about 31 minutes. Now I was hoping for it to be a little bit shorter, but I believe I was very thorough. So that episode is very useful, I believe. I go very deep into a lot of these concepts, and if you have the time to watch it, I would give it a shot. But for now, I'm gonna make a video that is a little bit more concise on the main talking points about rhythm. So what is rhythm? Rhythm is music in time. And so really, there wouldn't be any music without rhythm. It is the time aspect of music. It is notes in time. So rhythm is very important for things like strum patterns on the guitar or just being able to play interesting melodies. So let's jump right into it. Every piece of music has a pulse. Now that pulse is going throughout everything. It's not often audibly heard, but it's something that we feel. And the drum beat is playing off of the pulse. Same thing with all the other players in a band or any other musician is playing to a pulse of the music. Now this pulse can be fast, or it can be very slow, or somewhere in between. The speed of the pulse is also known as the tempo, and the tempo is measured in beats per minute. And beats per minute just means how many beats in that pulse are going to fit into 1 minute of time. So this can be 60 beats per minute, it can be 80 beats per minute, it can be 140 beats per minute, or whatever works. So rhythm is where we place notes in that pulse. It is the duration of notes or rests. Notes indicating certain pitches and rests meaning there being no sound at all. So in order to understand rhythm, we have to understand what the different note heads in reading music mean. And this is also present in modern tablature music. So the unit that we use to measure the duration of certain notes is the quarter note. Now the quarter note can be thought of as like a kilogram or a pound or like a meter or a yard. So we have a chart here that is showing a bunch of different note durations. Now at the very top, the one that looks like a circle is a whole note. Now a whole note is equal to 4 quarter notes. Okay, so it will be counted 1, 2, 3, 4. So we would play on the first beat 1, and then we would count 3 more beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You play on the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The one right below that is called a half note. Now a half note is given 2 quarter notes. So it would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4. So a half note is equal to 2 quarter notes. Now a quarter note is just given 1 quarter note. It is just 1, and if there were 4 quarter notes in a measure, it would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4 with 1 quarter note on each beat. This is where subdivision comes in. Now we can divide quarter notes in half and we get eighth notes. When we are counting that in a given piece of music, we count them as if we were counting on a beat, and then we add an and in between. So if there was a bar of just eighth notes, it would sound like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, with an eighth note being played on each one of those subdivided beats. Now this can be divided in half even further, and we get 16th notes. We can fit 4 16th notes in the space of 1 quarter note, or 2 16th notes in the space of 1 eighth note. So we can fit 2 eighth notes in the space of 1 quarter note, or we can fit 4 16th notes in the space of 1 quarter note as well. Now 16th notes would be counted 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So we put a 1 and then an E and a after it to indicate the 3 extra notes we are playing in the space of that one beat. Now we can subdivide this even further into 32nd notes and even further into 64th notes, but we're not going to deal with that in this video. We can also have things called dotted notes. Now if you see something that looks like a half note with a dot beside it, this means that we are adding half the value of that half note to that note. The half note being equal to 2 quarter notes, and the dot indicating that we add another quarter note onto that. So that dotted half note would be worth 3 quarter notes. If we see a dotted quarter note, then that would be worth a quarter note plus an eighth note, so worth a total of 3 eighth notes. If we see a dotted eighth note, then that would be worth 3 16th notes, and so on. If we see a dotted whole note, then that would be worth a whole note plus a half note. So for a total of 6 quarter notes. In standard sheet music, these note heads appear like this. So we see that the actual pitches on the staff are indicated by these different note heads as we have learned them. In tablature, however, it appears like this, with the rhythmic markings appearing above or below the tab on top of the numbers themselves. So the numbers are replacing the actual note heads, and we are just left with the stems. So we may notice that an eighth note has a little flag at the top, and if there are more than one eighth note in a row, then those are often connected together with a bar at the top. Now 16th notes much look the same. When they're on their own, they have a double flag on top, and when they're next to each other, they have the double bar going across all of them. In tablature, unfortunately, there's no standardized way of showing rhythm, and so we still get things like a quarter note and a half note looking like just a line beneath one of the numbers. So we kind of have to pick this up from context of knowing what time signature we're in. So a time signature looks like this. This is known as 4/4. The top number indicates how many beats we're putting into a measure. So instead of counting every pulse until we're in the hundreds of pulses, we divide that pulse into small, manageable segments. These are called bars or measures. And the time signature lets us know how many beats we are counting before we're just going to loop that count once again. So the top number of the time signature is indicating how many notes we're putting in one bar. So in this case, we have 4 beats per bar. So that would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we loop back around 1, 2, 3, 4 for the next bar, and then we keep on going 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can continue counting the entire piece of music like this unless there is a time signature change. Bottom number indicates what kind of note is getting the beat. So if we see a 4, the 4 equals a quarter note. If we see a 2 would equal a half note. If we see an 8 would equal an eighth note. If we see a 16 would equal a 16th note. So if we see 4/4, that means 4 beats per measure and the quarter note is getting the beat. If we see a 2/2, that means that there are 2 beats per measure and a half note is getting the beat. If we see 3/4, 3/4 means there are 3 beats per measure and the quarter note is getting the beat. If we see 6/8, that means that there are 6 beats per measure being counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and an eighth note is getting the beat. So these are really just ways of thinking about where the notes are falling in a pulse. A certain song can be interpreted in several different time signatures, just relative to how the musician is thinking about it. So in order to practice and to understand rhythm, we usually separate the practice from our instrument, and so we can tap or clap rhythms on their own before applying them to playing our instrument. So for our first example, we're going to set our metronome to 70 beats per minute. I'm just using the Metronome Beats app on my smartphone. So now that we have that beat going, we can see that this example is in 4/4, which means there's 4 beats per measure and a quarter note is getting the beat. So in that first measure, we have 4 quarter notes. Then in the next measure, we have 2 half notes. Then we have 4 quarter notes again and 1 whole note. So this is a very basic rhythm. So we're just going to practice clapping this just to get used to the different durations. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that was the first example, pretty straightforward. If you are having trouble with this, go back and try that again. Set up your own metronome and you can just look at it and try clapping through it. So the quarter notes are each getting 1 click of the metronome. The half notes are getting 2 because they're worth double, and a whole note is getting 4 beats. So next, in example 2, we have a mix of quarter notes and eighth notes and half notes, okay? So remember that when we're playing eighth notes, we are playing 2 notes in the space of 1 beat, and that would be counted 1 and, or 2 and. So 1, 2 and, 3, 4 and. Okay, so let's give this a shot at the same tempo, 70 beats per minute. You may notice that this is also in the time signature 4/4, meaning 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note is getting the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Once again, you can go back and just read that rhythm on your own. You can set up your own metronome. You can make it slower to 60 beats per minute if it helps you, or even slower than that. Try this as many times as you want, and once you get it right, do it right another few times. We really don't want to just get it right once. We want to be able to do it and replicate it. Next, we have example 3, and in this example, we're also in 4/4, meaning 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note is getting the beat. Now in this example, we have quarter notes and we have 16th notes, and half notes. So keep in mind that the 16th notes are 4 notes in the space of 1 beat, so we have to clap pretty fast to get all those in there. So you can slow this down on your own, but for right now I'm going to keep it at 70 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, E and a 3, 4 E and a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3 E and a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's really helpful if you count these out loud while you're clapping, so that you can really understand the duration of all of these notes. So now we're going to go back to example 2 and apply this rhythm to our instrument. We're only going to be worrying about our right hand right now. So with pick in hand, we're going to go to the 6th string and we're going to try playing this rhythm on that string. So starting up our metronome at 70 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Now we can try doing this rhythm as a strum as well. So each one of these note durations, we're going to strum the entire strings. So we can just mute the strings with our left hand. We just place all of our fingers on all the strings so we get this very muted sound. It doesn't matter to me whether you're playing down on every single one, so the strums just being down, or down and up. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be playing down on the quarter notes and down and up on all of the 8th notes. So on the end of each 8th note, I'm going to be playing an upstroke. You don't have to copy this. What's really important about strum patterns is the rhythm. So just getting the rhythm correct. It doesn't really matter to me whether or not you're playing up or down in the correct order. Starting up our metronome at 70 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Now if you had trouble with that, you can go back and you can do it at a slower tempo at your own speed. Now I'd like to bring your attention to the fact that I was not strumming with my entire arm on that example. I was mainly coming from the wrist and I was just strumming the distance of the string. So we don't want to overextend all the way down so we're actually scraping our pick guard. We want to avoid that as much as possible. We really want to build control with our strumming hand so that we can make really controlled movements. So now let's take a rhythm from an actual melody. This is from the song Yesterday by the Beatles. It's a very popular melody, so let's break it apart. So we're going to start by just tapping this rhythm. Now in the first bar there, we can see that in the first bar there, we can see that we are in 4/4, and we have 2 8th notes on the first 2 notes, which are going right up to the numbers there. And then the next rhythm above that 3rd note there on the 0 on the 3rd string, that is a line with a dot beside it. So in context of the time signature, I can see that this is a dotted half note, meaning that that half note is actually getting 3 quarter notes. So it's getting 3 pulses in that measure. And then in the next bar, we have a line on the first beat. Now, in context of that bar, I can see that there are 6 other 8th notes, which would add up to a total of 4 beats. So I can indicate that that first line there is indicating a quarter note. So this is where it becomes challenging with tablature and rhythm, is that we don't really have a standardized way for indicating it. So there can be some confusion over whether that line represents a half note or a quarter note. But with some practice, we can start to get to know it by context of how many beats are supposed to be in that bar. In this one, I know that there are supposed to be 4 beats per measure, so I can infer that if there are 6 other 8th notes adding up to 3 beats, then that first one will indicate a quarter note. Since there is no note being played above that line where the rhythm is indicated, I can assume that that will be a rest for a quarter note. So let's start up our metronome at 70 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Excellent work. If you had trouble with that, let's go back and let's try it again. maybe at a slower pace. Now we're going to take that rhythm and apply it to our 6th string only. Again, we're just going to worry about our right hand right now, so our left hand can just mute the strings. It's very beneficial that when we're practicing rhythm that we actually isolate our right hand, because it's doing all the rhythm when we're playing guitar. So we can't assume that our right hand is going to know what to do when we're trying to do everything else like playing the right notes. So let's split it up and learn the rhythm on its own before applying all the notes. There'll be more information on how to properly practice in episode 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, once we are comfortable with doing that and we believe that we have the rhythm exactly right, then we can apply the rhythm to playing on the actual strings that the notes are appearing. So we're still not going to be playing the actual notes, we're just going to be playing the rhythm on the strings that they appear. So the first 3 are going to be played on the 3rd string. And then the next 3 are going to be played on the 2nd string. And the next 3 are going to be played on the 1st string. And staying on the 1st string for the next 3 notes. And the rest we can figure out as we go. 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. And that's the end of the segment. Now, once we're comfortable with playing this rhythm on the different strings, then we can add the left hand notes into it. Now, this might be challenging at first, but since we have actually practiced the rhythm separately, it should be quite a lot easier than trying to go at it as learning the whole thing all at once with doing the right hand and the left hand at the same time. 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and that's the end of the example. Next we're going to talk about specific strum patterns. Now I go into greater detail in this in the long video, so I'm just going to touch briefly on this. Many guitar players get locked into playing 1 or 2 different strum patterns and they find it very difficult to break out of this. But the way that we break out of this is by learning rhythm at an intimate level. Learning how to play on beat and learning how to subdivide the beat at will. So we start out just by being able to play to the pulse with our right hand. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we can start to subdivide the beat. So we're going to be adding an and or an upstroke in between each one of those pulses. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Next what we're going to do is we're going to be playing a quarter note on 1 and then 2/8 notes on 2, a quarter note on 3 and then 2/8 notes on 4. Now the 8th notes can be played down up and the quarter notes will be played with just a downstroke. 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3. 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. So this is important to practice just with the right hand before we apply it to actually playing and changing chords. Being able to change chords in rhythm is very important as well, and the metronome can help with that. So how we get more complex strumming patterns is when we begin to decide to leave out certain beats in a pattern. 1 E and, E and, 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 1 and, E and, 1 E and. Then once we're comfortable with doing that with our right hand, then we can start adding chords to it. And we want to make sure to use our metronome when we're practicing our chord changes so we can get those chord changes right in time with the downbeat of the new bar. This is something that we should also be practicing separately from doing the rhythm so that we can take 2 chords and with the metronome time out exactly when we want to change, and so then we can get faster with our changes. Changing chords under time pressure can be very useful for getting used to getting into those chords very quickly. And so on. In order to do this, we want to start with a very slow metronome, maybe 60 beats per minute, and we want to change on every 4th beat. I'm choosing just 2 chords because we want to master changing between 2 chords before we start applying it to an entire progression. So we can do this drill on each chord change that there is, just changing between those 2 chords. And we do that on repeat until we can change those chords comfortably with hardly any gap between them. This may take some time, but really it is the shortcut to learning how to change chords very effectively and quickly. So that's all for this more concise overview of the introduction to rhythm. This is still considered episode 5, maybe episode 5B. So if you're watching this one first, when you have some time, you can check out the longer video. If not, this will hopefully suffice. If you're feeling confused or still unclear on some of these exercises, I would recommend checking out the longer video and even just skimming through it so that you can find the parts that you are missing. Thanks a lot for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel or send it to somebody who you think would benefit from this video, and I'll see you in episode 6, which is dealing with how to practice and building good practice habits. See you next time.